It was The Incredible Shrinking Son of Man. I thought it would be good because the outline is clear. It's like a topic by topic discussion of the Gospels and what might be historical, what might not be, and to understand certain things that are in there, whether they go back to Jesus or not. For instance, I have 2 chapters in it, the Hinayana Gospel and the Mahayana Gospel, and of course those are Buddhist terms, but I'm trying to explain how in the Gospels, Jesus says to somebody, give up everything, family, home, job, etc., and follow me. And on the other hand, there are people like Lazarus, who obviously are wealthy and are big friends of Jesus, but have not given up everything, and they don't seem to be criticized. So what's going on there? And I say, well, it's very much like Buddhism in that there are lay Buddhists who are conventionally moral and religious, but they have jobs, they have families, etc. And then there are the Buddhist monks and nuns who live a very self-denying lifestyle and beg for food door to door. The difference is that they figure, look, not everybody is suited for this kind of gypsy existence. So what about them? Well, in Buddhism, they believe in reincarnation, of course. So they say, if you're conventionally righteous and religious, all right, you may not be up for this, but maybe in your next life, if you play your cards right in this one, you'll reach spiritual advancement such that you can leave everything behind, because you're going to be doing something anyway in another life. So you might as well prepare to get even closer to enlightenment. Well, the New Testament doesn't really have reincarnation, but it does seem to have these 2 choices. And there are hints that they believe there would be different levels of reward in heaven or when the millennium came or whatever. But it seems to me that's the only way to explain it, and it's worth explaining. So I have 2 chapters devoted to that. Other ones like Jesus' ministry to outcasts, or biographical things, the nativity stories, the story of John the Baptist and the baptism and the Jordan, the miracles of Jesus. Is there a chance some of them were psychosomatic, or are they all mythology and so forth? And then the passion narrative, what really happened there, if anything, and then the resurrection story. So it's like a logical, clear succession of topics, and each one is dealt with in some depth. It sort of stands on its own, but it fits into the larger framework. And I thought the organization of it, as well as the of each chapter, let's look at this aspect and that and the other, I thought that might be a helpful sort of a template or model or something, depending on what you want to write about.
I'd like to have that book very much.
I think it's a pretty good one. It's one of my earlier books, and I think it's really a foundational one. It really sets up what the historical criticism of the Gospels is about, and what the results have been with a lot of scholars for a long time. And I believe it's done in a pretty accessible way. The material is complex, but I really believe it's possible to deliver that in a plain speech account with a little humor to make the medicine go down easily. And so I think it might be a good model. I'm sure you'd enjoy it.
There should be an answer, affordable, not monetarily, but affordable intellectually, where it could be something within our reach, like thinking for themselves a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah, and they don't know they're manipulating anybody. They don't think they're exploiting anybody. They really believe it's true. And chances are the reason they believe it is that they were brought up in it and they'd have believed anything their parents had taught them, or they just converted to it emotionally, or were sold a bill of goods themselves, and they just don't realize there's another side to it. And if you start pointing out that there is, maybe that's not the best way of looking at it. Have you ever thought of this? That can be very disturbing, because it's not just that you're being a stubborn customer. Boy, I wish they'd come on and admit I'm right. It's that the more sense the rejoinder makes, the more you begin to wonder, am I sure I'm right? This means a lot to me. If I'm wrong, boy, this is really going to disrupt things. So they're on the defensive. I think of what Freud said about religion. He said that he thought it was the projection of a wish world onto the real world. Well, I've never seen a better example of that than leftist political ideology. They don't care what the facts on the ground are. They just assert that it is the way they would like it to be. Like just yesterday, I heard this one Democrat saying that, oh yeah, that Biden, he's a great president. He's given us a strong economy. I thought, what planet are you living on? And this guy, no doubt, has persuaded himself that that's true. And like they say, my mind's made up. Don't confuse me with the facts. That seems to be the whole thing. And with the gender, the transitional thing, that's the same way. You are genetically a male or a female,
and that's it.
You can pretend that you're not, but that's what you're going to be doing. But that's not good enough for these folks. They want legal recognition that, oh yes, a trans woman is a real woman, and therefore it would be discrimination not to let these males in dresses be a part of women's sports. You're crazy. How can you be so wrong? Well, the wish world is reshaping the real world, and there will be disastrous results, such as, for instance, that many kids that undergo these operations eventually commit suicide. They can't undo what they did, and now they realize what an error it was. And hospitals are just taking advantage, saying, we get hundreds of thousands of dollars for every one of these operations, so bring it on, go ahead. And it's just an incredibly awful thing that threatens the disintegration of society.
If, let's say, a young boy, he's maybe 13, and or 15 maybe, and he hasn't grown a little mustache or something, or he's insecure, and you want to take him to a psychologist or somewhere where they can help him reinforce his masculine identity, they won't help him.
Right. Yeah, they're even if they know it's wrong, even if they're not cynical and just doing it for the money. These doctors are under the heel of their hospital administrations or medical societies that say, I'm afraid if you don't get on the bandwagon with this and go along this gender affirming surgery and all that, you're fired.
Exactly.
What are they going to do? And it really seems to me, ultimately, you're going to have two parallel societies, and that might necessitate splitting up countries ideologically, though that'd be terribly messy. But I could well imagine as they say, a blue state America and a red state America, where in the red state you don't have pornographic how-to manuals in kindergarten libraries. You don't have drag queen story hour. You don't have people trying to convert males into females and vice versa. All that stuff would be against the law. And you could see that, and you wouldn't have socialistic economies, and it would be a great experiment to see after 10 or 20 years if the blue states would be livable. if it would be viable, if they're soft on crime. I mean, you can see what's happening to big cities now. They're becoming like in the old Kurt Russell movie Escape from New York, just a walled off forbidden zone. And you would have the two models side by side, and eventually maybe the people in the blue states would snap out of it and say, okay, we tried it, it ain't working. What say we get back together and do it your way? But again, these people are experts in denying obvious reality, so who knows?
And the propagation of this population control, because if you have same-sex marriage, you won't have kids, right? Naturally.
Oh, yeah. Oh, same thing with the transgender deal.
Exactly. Since 1992, I haven't seen myself online the document, but
That's probably
I
true,
wanted to ask
though.
you.
Even if it's a fiction, it's just another version of what we know is happening with like the World Economic Forum and these investment houses like BlackRock and others, and this what is it, ESG policy that these people pursue, where they're handling the money of corporations and investing it in green energy and various things that are not working, and the so people are not getting the return on their investments because it's all ideology. And again, they don't really care how the chips fall. We're just using your money for our agenda. And now people are realizing that, and there's beginning to be a kind of a backlash. But yes, the World Economic Forum, they're globalists. They're trying to have a single government. And though I like the utopian version of that you see on Star Trek, for instance, that's imagining that kind of thing. But look at what most of the governments of the world are like. Do you think that a world government would tilt in that direction, or in a genuinely democratic one? You'd be surrendering to the leftists if you did that. And of course, Biden and others are happy to do that. But we're in big
because
trouble.
the problem with let's say if we did have a one global totalitarian government, the issue with that is that actually the way we are, and I'm speaking for myself, if I had an absolute power, it would be very corrupt. we were very corrupt when like I've read these like quotes, sometimes that they post online, like power corrupts, but absolute power it destroys, something like that.
Corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the point, that we're not ready, not because it wouldn't be a good idea, but because the quality of our human nature today isn't ready for that.
Exactly. Once I was on a panel at a Council for Secular Humanism meeting, and I'm not sure what the general topic was, but it had to do with world politics. And I gave a talk on jihadism and genocide and so forth. But this guy, what's his name? He's a famous Italian evolutionary biologist. I can't think of his name offhand. Brilliant. Well, during this panel, he said, we ought to just do whatever the United Nations says, because the goal is to have a world government, and that's the closest thing to it. And I thought to myself, are you insane? Do you keep up with what the UN does? Surely you're just out of touch with reality. And this guy was no dope, but when it came to politics, he was incredibly naive, and that kind of tells you something about a lot of these people that they've had the education, they should know better, but unfortunately that education was mainly indoctrination.
Doesn't guarantee anything. It's like,
Yeah.
I see it here everywhere. Engineers, doctors, dentists, very brilliant people, and you see them every Sunday noon lining up for church.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
So that
compartmentalizing their minds.
that's very, to me, it's very interesting. The way,
Mm.
like, they are really, they went to universities, and here in Mexico, the universities of the school system is completely secular, except for the private schools where there are um, these nuns there, or the priests, but in general, here in Mexico, the public education is completely secular, and it's still something that it's unbelievable. It's very interesting. I wouldn't know how to explain it. And if you try to reason with them, you will probably either lose their friendship, or mm, simply the next time you want to say hello or something, they will just pass by and pretend they didn't recognize you.
Yeah, that happens here. I had the same thing happen when I dropped being a conservative Christian. People I knew and I was friends with in my church, I didn't want to cut them off. I didn't have any enmity toward them. But I remember one day, this guy passed me and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he just pretended I wasn't there and walked by. And again, I've lost friends. I've been vilified on atheist uh, message boards and kicked out of the H.P. Lovecraft fandom and all that because of political stuff that you would think was irrelevant, but people don't draw a distinction. And I figure, well, it's their loss, and but it's amazing. It's just like these the Jehovah's Witnesses and others who practice shunning. If you leave the group, you're dead to me.
Exactly, like the Mormons also.
Oh,
And these type of, this is not, they preach that it's God's love, but if there's this type of God that says, I love you no matter what, but if you don't love me back, go to hell. That's not love, that's manipulation. Just
yeah.
like, actually, can you understand that? Like, if you have a relationship with someone, do you really understand how it works, not to be actually manipulated to this extent, to where you have to give up to your very basic intellectual level of understanding that we're not saying that Jesus didn't exist. If it's written, he probably did exist. And I don't even like say that the virginal birthing took place. Maybe it did take place. Why not? But that's not the point. The point is what they teach. They teach you that no matter what, just believe and you'll be okay. Just don't think, don't don't ask anything, but just have complete faith, and everything will turn out just fine. What where does that solution, in what universe does that solution work?
Yeah, that is just the prime case of manipulation. And God, there's a cartoon I love where it's one of the old pictures of Jesus knocking at the door of your
I
heart,
remember
and
that.
he says, "Let me in so I can save you." And from inside comes the word balloon, "Save me from what?" And Jesus then says, "From what I'm going to do to you if you don't let me in." What is it? How emotionally childish do you have to believe not to see that's what's going on? It's like some nut asks this girl for a date, and she's not sure, and he pulls out a gun and puts it to her head and says, "Well, you sure you don't want to go out with me?" "Oh, no. What time will you pick me up?" It's How do you not see that's what's going on?
Maybe, let's say, 10 years ago, I would be very concerned about how come there are atheists in the world. And right now, I completely understand their viewpoint, and I understand why they exist and why it's okay for atheists to exist. This world is a mixture of opponents, and we need to have both sides, the very, 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 very deep down to the bone believers, and the very, very, very cold-hearted, cold-blooded thinkers that don't believe in anything except for what they can actually prove empirically. And I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, in fact, each sharpens the other. Like
like the scissors, right?
Yeah, yeah. You do need that, because if you're a believer, there's certain things you're not going to question, and even as a believer, you probably should, because look at the exploitation that religious institutions give. I'm willing to say that's not inherent to religion, but it happens an awful lot, and so you need somebody from the outside to point these things out. Are you sure that's what your Jesus would want? And like, you're too into it, like a fish in water, and you need somebody to say, wait a minute, I think you're missing something here. And just the other way around, if you have atheists who, because they don't believe in the supernatural, reduce everything to, well, it's just flashes of chemicals in your brain, and there's no such thing as beauty. That's a politically constructed elitism thing. You need somebody from the religious department over there that was saying, I think you're selling humanity short. I think you're not tuned to the right wavelength. You're missing something. And so both really, each needs the other. And you got to be like, I pride myself on being open-minded for a selfish reason. I want to understand other people's views, because I must have missed something. I always think, this person is intelligent, maybe even brilliant. I don't understand how they can believe what they do. Maybe I ought to read some of their thinkers, and at least I can understand it. And sometimes I've wound up totally changing my mind and saying, son of a gun, how did I never think of this before? And I don't feel afraid of that. It's enriching to do that. I try not to be defensive. So what's the problem?
Exactly. There shouldn't be any problem. I consider myself like someone that I understand. Like, that might be a very poor conclusion, but I understand that if there is a creation, there needs to be a creator. So that's what I think. However, even if I were an atheist, I would still believe in scientific miracles. Like, I would say, like, I probably wouldn't use the word, oh my God, oh my science. I say, oh my science, look at that star. You know what I'm saying? We found a new star. What a miracle. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But because if we did, if we renounce to that, what would we end up with as humans if we don't have that tuned in sense of surprise inside of us?
The sense of wonder, yeah. Then something's wrong if you throw cold water on that flame,
or go and, if you're going to be a father and you want to be present at the delivery at the OR, and see the delivery of your baby, even if you're an atheist, I doubt very much that you wouldn't be surprised by the miracle of life.
Yeah, that really does qualify somehow as a miracle. The older I get, the less I take for granted. And thinking, I mean, I was present when my daughters were born, but even if I hadn't been, the very idea that the human race is repopulated, or any species, that it replaces itself with another one like it that comes from within its own body, that strikes me as so outrageous, so crazy sounding, but we know it happens. It's like the theory of the stork dropping the baby down the chimney. It seems more plausible than what really happens. So does that mean there was a divine creator? I don't know, but it does make me take that seriously.
I wouldn't speak about God. I would speak about this. What are in terms of, a birth, not even a human being. Also, it can be let's imagine a little pigeon or a chick.
Same thing, right?
When they're opening up the shell, like how did they get trained to know exactly when to open the shell?
Yeah, it's
like, that's the timing. Like, wow, how? Where did the oxygen came from before that moment? Like, what's going on?
At the end of the book of Job, Job has been pointing out all of these outrages that God has perpetrated on him and saying, I don't know why God is doing this. I don't deserve it. I wish I could take him to court, but of course I can't. And at the end, God appears in a cyclone and he starts saying, tell me, Mr. Smart Guy, you think you can hold me responsible? Do you happen to know what keeps the stars together in a constellation? Do you know where migration instinct for birds comes through? And he names one thing after another. And Job then says, no. Yeah, I didn't think so. And yet you think you can figure me out. That's what I call, that is so brilliant to me. And it's a very ancient writing. You had great, smart people way back there. They weren't all stupid. And that is a kind of intellectual conscience for me. What do you really know? And actually, the lack of knowledge of explanations, to me, promotes the sense of wonder. In fact, if you say, oh, well, I don't have to wonder about that because I know God did it. He just snapped his fingers. No.
I mean, you can't deny that.
Yeah. The thing where Hagar is complaining to Abraham. I'm sorry, Sarah's complaining to Abraham because Hagar, the concubine, is pregnant and Sarah's not. And he says, well, I want you to get that woman out of here. And Abraham says, okay already. And he kicks her out. But God saves her anyway. That's based on the storyteller's own experience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. You're wonderful, and I really like being with you.
Oh, vice versa.